mental health's a risk, and it's recognised under legislation as a risk that needs to be identified, assessed and controlled, or eliminated if possible. So from that perspective, mental health can translate into a safety incident by tragic events arising from workplace bullying, etc. The real issue with mental health, though, is about how to effectively control it, and that's where employers are grappling. It's not as tangible as guarding on a machine, so it requires a greater level of insight and application to really uncover, one, where that hazard sits and if it presents as a risk in the workplace.
When you're talking damage to a person physically, such as being electrocuted, the hazard is electricity. When you're talking damage to them from a wellness standpoint, it's a little more complex an issue. It's about stress, it's about fatigue, it's about all of the things that contribute to their wellness. So you always start with risk management with understanding the hazard first. Issues may be quite complicated. You may have occupational stressors as well as stressors outside the work site that combine and basically create a wellness issue. So the investigation of that would be the first step. Understanding that hazard will then help you identify the events you need to be concerned about, and if some of those events are potentially catastrophic or disastrous, then you can apply the critical control approach.
Mental health and wellbeing is becoming a salient safety issue because of the results. It's been the sleeping giant. It's been present for a long period of time. It's only now that we're starting to truly understand how big an impact it's actually having on our organisation's safety performance. And it's interesting is that when we look at significant events, so quite often fatalities or multiple fatalities, when we do the incident investigations and we start to consider the causal effect, there's been a big shift in actually just identifying systems failure or object failures and really starting to think about act failures, which often is about the mindset of individuals. So quite often there's been an element of frustration, distraction, or not performing at their optimal level, which of course now people are associating that's about the mental health and well-being of individuals. So it's become a safety issue because the results are becoming present. And we're starting to understand that direct correlation between a fit and healthy workforce will be able to perform to its optimal level, which will give us the optimal output performance. Where we are seeing inconsistency or organisations moving through that plateau effect in their performance, quite often there's a direct relationship with the level of engagement with employees. And when we start to discover and dig into that, there's absolutely a direct correlation with the well-being and mental health of employees and contractors.
What was traditionally seen as risk-free and what's not, and certainly health and well-being is an area in organisations that was traditionally seen as, well, not risk-free, but just not a risk. It arguably wasn't on the radar. So I think one of the key areas for the safety officers in the business, and I'll have to say HR, but then link that with the line managers, is to understand that health and well-being is one of those non-core traditional areas in the business that can be a risk, is a risk, and needs to be effectively managed potentially as one of the critical few.
Especially if you look at my industry, mining, where you have fly in, fly out, and you have shift work, and it is a major issue for any industry that has that kind of structured shift work. I also think it's relevant to leaders too, because in my industry, leaders fly all over the world and are often in meetings with jet lag and various states of unrest. But the wellness is actually a topic that I think is probably becoming much more timely as we recognize its link to productivity. So if we saw issues related to health, whether it be mental health or whether it be general just physical health, we can use a critical control management approach to actually focus in on those things and say what is important. For example, if it is the management of fatigue as a part of wellness, we can actually manage it much more effectively with a critical control approach.
I think the biggest opportunity for organisations here is to shift the thinking from being reactive in this space to being proactive. Let me be clear, proactive doesn't mean let's do more fruit bowls and we can all wear colourful clothes on a Friday. Proactivity around mental health and wellbeing is really truly understanding how do we help engage every employee but also identify and associate where people aren't performing to their optimal level. What are the causal reasons for that? So it's about getting closer to our people. It's also about encouraging them in a proactive sense to operate like a high-performance athlete would. Think about themselves as a complete organisation. What am I putting into my body? How am I treating my body? What am I exposing myself to? What are the expectations and pressures that I'm putting on myself? And how do we actually facilitate in a collective environment supporting one another to make sure we're all operating at that optimal level on a daily basis? It's not an event, it's not an initiative, it's not something that's done to us, it's an environment. And I think that's where we're getting it wrong. We treat this very reactively. And when people think about mental health and wellbeing, they immediately shift into employee assistance programs, which are often a reactive outcome of a situation. It is a big, bold step, and we appreciate that, and people are now starting to discover the direct association with investing in this will have a positive return. But it's really got to be fit for purpose for organisations. We're not big fans of this fruit bowls and colourful days. We're not sure that that's actually the way to shift and get proactive in the mental health and wellbeing of organisations.
If employers are overt about it, have direct strategies, undertake surveys and reviews and opportunities to try and gauge where they're at and how effective they're dealing with it, then you'll start to see some gains made in this area.
I think one of the critical aspects of safety leadership and safety management is this concept of the state of mind. So why do people make decisions that put themselves at risk? And one of those areas is your state of mind. And I would make a direct link between health and well-being to somebody's state of mind. So for me, it isn't just an HR role, it's actually a full line management role. It's understanding the people who work for you, understanding what makes them effective in the work environment, but also understanding outside of work, what are the influences on what's happening in their life that's providing them the state of mind or creating the state of mind that they're in, and then linking that to the behaviours. And I'll go back to saying that culture is a part of why people make the decisions that they do. So from a GSI perspective, if you measure it, you can actually do something about it.